Stand like Stone Cold with a few beers. Play the game, I end the game. I'm champion, I'm Triple H. Undertaker, I'm your maker. Bury the brother like Kane. Ooh, 1-3, hit the tombstone, hit the choke slam on face. Ooh, yeah, like a macho heel, tell like I'm muscle. If you suffer like tomatoes, I'ma keep a couple models. Ooh, and you may call me HBK. When I'm tuning up the vein, you best be getting in my way. Ooh, yeah, I'm degenerate, I love it, yes, I love it. If you ain't down with that, then I got two words for you, suck it. Too sweet, put your fangs up. Too sweet, too sweet.
Welcome everyone to your longest running Australian wrestling podcast, Wrestle Radio Australia. I am your host, Todd Eastman. It's good to be here this week, guys, with an interview that wasn't originally going to be what we planned on doing this week. Originally, I was going to have the co-creator and executive producer of the Dark Side of the Ring documentary series, Evan Husney, on the show to talk about his upcoming season 3 of Dark Side of the Ring. But unfortunately, because it debuts in America on May the 5th, so at the moment he's being slammed with having to write stuff for, I think, some of the end episodes and that sort of stuff. So, and also having to do actual mainstream publicity for the documentary series. So unfortunately he couldn't make the time that we had ready for the interview. So we are going to reschedule and get it done sometime after the debut date, which is May the 5th. So sometime in that area, we're going to have him on the show, which is something I'm really looking forward to, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk to him about that, because I love that documentary series. So when he does have the time, and we're going to get him on and have a good talk about that. But I think Bonza brings it up in this episode. When there's a crisis, the word for crisis is the same for word for opportunity in Chinese or something, and it's a Simpsons thing. You when you see the interview, you'll know what I'm talking about. Out of something bad happening, I guess something good really happened out of this, because I got to talk to David Storm and Jack Bonza, who are two of the leading names or leading forces behind two of the biggest promotions in this country. That's PWA and EPW. So, this is an idea I've had for a while, to be honest with you. I wanted to get two guys who are not only in front of the camera, but also behind the scenes, driving forces of promotions from around the country. So maybe people at home or people that listen to the show can get a little glimpse behind that to see what is actually involved in putting together these shows, and what really goes into it. Because I when I learned myself, I couldn't believe how much goes into it, because originally when you first start, I'm like, I guess, I don't know if you guys think it, but when I first started, I was like, oh, you rock up with a ring, have a little bit of an entrance, you're fine. Yeah, you can do it as long as the wrestling's fine, that's fine. So much more goes into it than that, guys, and I've learned over the years about that, and not to the level of what of course Bonza is doing with PWA, of course, streaming their shows live on Fight, and also with Storm doing his stuff with EPW on demand. So we talk all about that, and it's a very wide-ranging conversation we have, and to the point where, see, I didn't know. Here's a tip, guys. If you're doing stuff on Zoom, one-on-one conversations, it's fine. You can go all day and you're completely fine. If you are doing stuff like this with more than 2 people, apparently you can only do 40-minute chunks at a time, and then they just cut you off. I wasn't aware of that, unless you pay, of course. I wasn't aware of that. And of course, being in the wrestling business, paying for something goes against everything that holds true to me. But it's something I'm going to have to do, I think, for the future, because we end up blowing through 2 lots of the 40 minutes for this. So I don't think all of it will be on the show, so don't panic. But what you'll get is you'll see heading into the first half where I start panicking, because I've had a little countdown timer coming up telling me how long I had left, and then sort of I wrap up the show pretty quickly because I had another countdown timer coming up. But this is one thing where I will definitely have the boys back on, because we didn't cover a quarter of what I really wanted to talk about, and the stuff that I wanted to talk about with these guys. And that's merely because both of them are great conversationalists, and you can ask a question and you're not going to get just a yes or no answer. You're going to get the full breadth of what they mean and then what they wanted to put across with this answer. So to be honest with you, I really did love this conversation. I knew it was something that if we could pull it off was going to be really good. But of course, I should have known, because every time I've talked to Davis, every time I've talked to Bonza, it's always been really good chats. It's always been really sort of in depth into the business. And just the fact that you've got those two both talking about that stuff makes for a mega show, to be perfectly honest, in my opinion. So because it is a mega show, there won't be another Views from the East this week. I'm sorry, but I just have to cut it down for time. Otherwise, this show will go for 3 hours. And let's face it, people have proved lately that 3 hours is not good for a wrestling show. So we'll be back after this with Jack Bonza and David Storm right here on Wrestle Radio Australia. Have you been watching all the action the past couple of weeks and thinking, I want to do that? Well, here's your chance. 3 Count Pro Wrestling Academy have their next tryouts on May the 1st at 73A Logan River Road, Beenleigh, Queensland. Hit up their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or email admin at 3countfitness.com now to register your interest. Don't miss out on a chance to train under Dunkzilla Mark Davis. Cost for the tryout is $50. DM or email your interest now. Well, your guy anyway in WA, he got in with such a friggin' majority. He must feel like he could do anything though at the moment.
Well, they call him Emperor McGowan these days.
Yeah. Because what did the Liberals got like 2 seats or something? It was disgusting. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I think they were saying the Nationals could form opposition by themselves. Yeah, it's just crazy. But I mean, you know, in troubled times, people get very conservative, and you know, the fact that if he'd blown the whole thing and it had been a disaster, I think would have been a very different story. But the fact that he was able to manage it pretty effectively, and there's a lot of argument around the fringes about how effective it was, especially when stuff like this still happens, you know, 6 to 8 months past where you thought it was all kind of smoothing over a little bit. Yeah, it's still very much hotly debated about how well they actually did manage it, or whether we just got lucky. We're so isolated here that you're kind of protected from it. It's not like Victoria and New South Wales, where if you get an outbreak in Victoria, potentially spreads to 2 or 3 states. But here, by the time someone gets here and then we're able to find out, and then you quarantine those people, you can just about offset any problems that cross the border.
Well, they've been really...
I mean, Sydney's the international airport, so if you're going anywhere, you're going to Sydney first. Like,
Yeah, we've been real lucky, I guess, when they have those outbreaks, they were able to like contain them fairly quickly. But then I was talking to a couple of, like, I got a chat group with wrestling fans from around the world, and because I didn't realize, and I'm just like, how long do you have to quarantine when you go to America? And they're like, oh, there's no quarantine. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, you just go to America. Because I was wondering, because I saw like Maddie and Steph were already at like Takeover and that thing. I was just going, well, that's, I don't think they left before.
Apparently they had to isolate for 1 week, which makes no sense. But by isolate, it was basically just don't go to the performance center. Like, you could still go shopping, you could still do whatever. They just weren't allowed to go around other wrestlers. So I don't think the country made them isolate. I think
Hello, Florida.
And then apparently they were talking about like maybe not bringing them in until after WrestleMania, because they didn't want to accidentally have an outbreak right before they were going to have the big event with people at it. I don't know if that ended up happening, but that was one of those things. But yeah, they said it was like the flight over there was like dead. Like, it was like you have rows to yourself, like no one's flying, it's this and that. And then you get there onto a domestic flight and it's like it doesn't exist. Like, everybody's bundled in on the planes. And like, it was just...
Oh, well, only a few 100,000 dead.
Well, yeah, I think it's like they got a vaccine and they're like, well, we're fine now. Everyone go back. You're fine.
Yeah.
Well, it's only going to kill 1% of the population. That's only...
And it's the old people. So, I mean, really, does it matter? It's like, come on. Look, I'll suppose we're like, 3 minutes into it, but I'll introduce the guys, I guess. I'm very, very lucky and happy to have two of the leading forces behind two of the biggest promotions in the country. Jack Bonza from PWA and Davis Storm from EPW. First of all, guys, thank you so much for coming on. This was actually something that I'd been thinking about doing for ages, just having like two guys like yourself on a show to just chop up the way the business is ran, sort of thing. But it sort of took me getting sort of stuck for an idea for a show this week to go, oh, I'll just pitch it. What if I got to lose at this point? I just won't have a show this week otherwise. So thank you very much for coming on.
We're the replacements, Bonza.
But your subs for international. So there you go. I mean, it's not like your subs for scrubs. If they'd have pushed the premiere date back for Dark Side of the Ring, it might have been a different story.
We'll have to send him our thanks. We've been bumped up to the big show, mate.
Yeah, wow. I must admit, when he emailed me to sort of apologize, it took me a little while to respond, because I'm just like, I'm gonna cool down just a little bit because I got up so early. I'm a little bit mad right now. I'm gonna go out shopping, and when I come back, and he was lucky because I found a Davey Boy Smith figure when I was out, so I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good now. I'll message him back in a good mood.
Yeah, that was funny. Once I had, I think I did an interview for the Observer once. Because of the time difference, they wanted it at like some god awful time in the morning. But I was actually in Perth for the last time I was at EPW, and so it's like another weird time. And so like because it's 2 hour time difference anyway, so we're kind of like thrown off anyway. It's like 4 a.m, and then at like 4:30 a.m, and I'm like awake trying to wait for this phone call. They messaged me saying they're not going to do.
Oh God.
See, of all the American ones I've done, there's been like, usually I'm usually just like straight up with them. So look, this isn't my full-time job, so I don't have time during the week to do it. So I can do it on a Friday your time, because that's Saturday my time. And I don't mind having to like either start late or get up early in the morning to do it. So that sort of worked out. But I remember when, this is years ago now, I did Jeff Jarrett when he was promoting that Global Force, and he'd done like a deal with New Japan to have Wrestle Kingdom on Fight or something, I think it was. He was doing interviews for that, and I had to do that at 1 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Eve to talk to him for half an hour. And I was like, and it was only because at the time Josh was like, I can't, I'm with my family, can you please do this? I'm like, yes, okay, I'll do it, fine. So it was very, it was a very bleary-eyed sort of one too, because I'd been out for dinner with friends before, sort of got in going, all right, time to sober up and do this. It was just lucky that wasn't video back then, because it would have been a different story. Well, we talked about it a little bit off, and I guess at the start, mate. Davis, you only just really dodged your last show getting caught by COVID, I guess, in a lockdown.
Yeah.
You must have been thanking your lucky stars that it happened. Not that it happened, but that it happened the week later and not the week before, because you would have been in all sorts of trouble.
Sure. So one of our wrestlers actually messaged me as the press conference was going on and said, did you realize that the last 2 snap lockdowns have happened the week after an EPW show? So we've managed to escape twice this year, 2 snap lockdowns, both going for a week or less. But I mean, you know, that would have set us back pretty badly, especially with Robbie coming over for the last show, traveling from New South Wales. He would have been trapped on this side of the country, or, you know, or vice versa. He would have been prevented from coming in. So yeah, you know, both times this year we've run 2 major EPW shows, and both times the week after we've gone into snap lockdown here in WA.
You must be really sort of, well, no, you guys, well, both of you, I guess, do you get worried coming up to like week of shows that this stuff can happen? Are you constantly checking every day to make sure nothing's breaking? Because you've got one on May the 8th, so you'd be getting ready to sort of gear up for it when you're Bonza.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no.
If it happens, it happens.
It's a defeatist attitude. I mean, what do you do if there's a lockdown? there's a lockdown. What do you do? Like, we deal with it when we get to it. I mean, the only other option is to not run. Like, I mean, what do we? I mean, the odds of a lockdown happening aren't very high. But now I you know, but you know,
Yeah.
like it's like, yeah. I mean, like, I mean, there's nothing we can do to prevent
Yeah.
it. There's nothing we can do to stop it. We can just be vigilant as we possibly can, and then just keep moving forward.
And especially because this one you're finally back at Max Watts.
Yeah, we finally got in. That was a funny one because we tomorrow we're doing Lucha Fantastica, which is really cool promotion. Where basically you get a lot of the local wrestlers, but they do full masks and all do alternate characters, and it's all standing room, and it's like a different feel. And the guy who runs it, you know, speaks Spanish and does the whole thing. Like, it's really fun kind of show. But he contacted us after we booked the other one and was like, "Oh, can you guys do May 8 at Max Watts?" And I'm like, I don't really, I don't like that you're doing a wrestling show at Max Watts. And he's just like, well, you know, it's a comedy festival. There were no other dates in Factory Theatre. Like, you want to swap? So we actually had to switch it. And that's why originally we announced April 30 at the last show, and then came out and said, no, actually it's May 8, but we're back at Max Watts. Like, that's kind of what happened. So yeah, but no, we're looking forward to it. It's going to be really cool to get back in there. Factory Theatre is a really good venue, but I just don't think it quite has the atmosphere that Max Watts has, especially with like the mezzanine and the stage, and it's just such a cool place to be.
So has the delay to get back to Max Watts been just like dates available, or has it just been?
I mean, not to get into it too much, but like Max Watts, I think, is technically licensed as a nightclub. So the difference in the law is coming back. Like, the day that they said you can go to dance clubs and dance again was the day that Max Watts opened.
Oh, okay.
So it was just a different license. That was all. That was just why the timing happened, and then that's why we made the announcement like 3 days after those different laws came in. It just is some weird contractual thing, because it used to be a nightclub like years ago, and they just apparently never changed the bar licensing over. So it's just been tough. Plus, it's one of those things where it's funny because Max Watts is actually has a bigger capacity than Factory Theatre, but you wouldn't think of it. It's just because the way it's shaped. I don't know if you've ever been there, but when we have the mezzanine up top, when you're looking at the ring, you can only really be at the front. But if you don't need to be able to see down into this particular spot, then you can fit like a lot more people up there. So it's actually like a much bigger capacity venue. It just doesn't really serve the wrestling purpose to have people there, because once you're like, one person back, you can't see the ring anymore.
Yeah, because it's not like seating or anything, it's just standing up there, isn't it?
Yeah, whereas Factory, you can just kind of have seats going further backwards. So it may not be the best view at the back, but you can still see. So that's just kind of changes around. But
did you have any problem with Gate 1, Davis?
Yeah, we've had our own set of issues that, the operating costs of that venue. So it's for, again, like Bonza, I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that, but it, for us moving from Cyril Jackson, which was basically a high school gym where we ran for a number of years, we had a really sweet deal on the place. The people who ran the place were fantastic to deal with, but probably inspired by, what Bonza's doing there and what MCW have done, we really wanted to get EPW out of the gyms and into performance venues, because, really, that is the platform that the elite wrestlers in this country should be performing on. We shouldn't still be floating around in dingy school halls, because, no matter how good the wrestling is and how good the production is, people can't shake the feeling of the fact that they're walking into a suburban area and walking into a high school gym. There's really no escaping that aesthetic on the way in, and it does devalue your product somewhat. So, we were desperate to get out of there, and luckily our production guy worked for the Gate 1 Theatre. We had done some local television tapings there maybe about a decade ago, or maybe longer. I think it was sort of 2007. So we knew the venue, but it's a very different venue now. It had been done up more for performance. the place was kind of decked out how we would like it to be set up for wrestling. So yeah, but obviously there are operating costs that go with that, and making sure that we could sell the venue to the sort of capacity to be able to make it worthwhile, and not even worthwhile in terms of, banking a lot of money, but more in terms of just making sure that we were going to break even no matter what. Everyone's obviously desperate to get back to performing, but at the same time, you can't just be throwing good money into the ocean. So it was a really thin line in terms of just waiting until the venue were comfortable with running, and in turn, we were able to make sure that our operating costs were going to be covered so that we were desperate to get back to shows. We wanted to put on shows. Everyone wanted to get back to some sense of normalcy. And we were lucky. I think we got there before most. We did our first major show back in December, double header in January, and then the show a couple of weekends back. So we've been very fortunate in the number of shows we have been able to do, but it has been trying. I think much like Bonza said, for me, once the show's announced, I don't really pay a thought to whether we're going to get cancelled or not, because all your energy just starts to go into making sure that the promotion for the show is on track, and that wrestlers are communicated with, and the show's going to run smoothly, and that's really all you can do. But I do think that there is a sense of one foot in, one foot out sometimes, that even though we are back to normal and you don't focus on it, it still doesn't quite feel normal being back at shows. There is a little bit of hesitancy, isn't even the right word. It's not that the crowd's holding back or the performers are holding back, but just there is a sense still of unease that everything isn't quite right. It's almost like at any point you can get that tap on the shoulder going, no, not this month, boys. I'm like, fuck. Yeah. So it's frustrating at times, especially here. We've had the 2 snap lockdowns this year, so it does feel like sort of 1 step back, 2 steps forward. But rather stepping than not stepping.
And I think the big thing that's frustrating is that it's completely outside of our control. Like, there's absolutely nothing any of us can do. Like, if something happens, then we're screwed. I think it's just such a rough thing. Like, trying just to literally not. No, it's not like there's something we can overcome or something we can do about it or something we can work towards harder or move past. It's just a random element that we can't control. That can be very frustrating. So especially when like I don't know you guys like, but something like normally we book dates a year ahead of time. So it's just kind of one of those. It's just kind of one of those things where it can be really hard. But I think the other side of that, and like when you were saying about because I mean when you originally messaged us and you kind of said like one of the points was what's it like running a show amid like coming back from the pandemic, right? Like with me, one of the major business lessons that I always try to put forward, like, and I try to focus on no matter how bad things get, is, and it's always funny because I always just think of the line from The Simpsons, right? Like when Lisa says to Homer, the same word in Chinese for crisis is the same word as opportunity, and Homer goes, "Yes, crisis-opportunity." It's like it's the business lesson in that in all crisis there is an opportunity for someone smart enough to see it. And and the thing that I think about when I think of EPW is strong in-ring performances, right? Without having to be reliant on an interstate or an international. And it's the same with PWA because we have such strong training schools. I think that's where it comes from. I think it's our feeder system, right? Like you guys have like two training centers. Cool, so like like when you go to a training school and the head trainer is Robbie Eagles and Madison Eagles, and then you got Ricky South, and you got the Velocities, and then you got like Lucci, and you got like Jessica, like everybody there 3-4 times a week, and then you just produce new students who are like better. You get the prefects, and you get like Cherry, you get all these different things, and the same with you guys. If there is not even a lockdown, but if there was a lockdown in Victoria and South Australia and Western Australia at the same time, but New South Wales can still run a show, that doesn't hurt our shows.
No.
Yeah.
So like, and it's the same with you guys. If everybody else can't come in, you guys are fine. You know,
Yeah.
it's the same thing because we have such strong rosters. And so when I'm trying to think about like, I mean, because the pandemic sucks. Like, there's no getting around how bad it is personally for everybody, but we can't help it. So what we can do is do what we can to try and move forward. And the actual, when I say the good thing, I mean the qualified good thing about the lockdown from my perspective is that it kicked everybody in the stomach equally as hard.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like it affected PWA more than it affected someone else. It affected everybody the same, which means that, you know, it killed off a lot of weaker companies. You know, it killed off a lot of competition, but it didn't kill us off. It didn't kill you guys off. You know, like that's the thing is like, I mean, that's the only way I've been able to look at it is what can we do now, like to take advantage of this? And because the thing is, you look outside of like pro wrestling, right? Because we're not like, I mean, who is PWA competing with really? It's not other pro wrestling, you know, until we start streaming online. And, you know, there's so many things, so many videos and content and things that people can buy and download. Then it might get a little competitive that way. But, you know, locally speaking, we don't have competition because like, you know, EPW and PWA are running on the same night. Who cares? Like, they're totally different, you know, live audiences. Like it doesn't matter. There's no competition. So, but we're not just competing with them. We're competing with bands. We're competing with plays. We're competing with movies. Like when's the last time you went to the movies?
Yeah.
You know,
Not since lockdown.
No,
I've actually been once for the Kong Godzilla. It's the only one I've been to.
They had Kong Godzilla. They had Mortal Kombat. They had
Yeah, I know.
Well,
like, you know, it's bad when the cinemas even started their own like online streaming service. That's when you're like, well, this is pretty fucked.
But the point is that like, you know, international bands can't tour, movies aren't getting released. You know, we have an opportunity to come out guns blazing, you know, and so that was kind of the way we were trying to look at it when we were coming back to shows. Like, okay, when we come out, we're going to come out and hit hard because like we have a window here where like there's other stuff that can't run, but because we can run and be completely self-sufficient, like we don't need an interstate, we don't need an international, we don't need anything like that to have a full strength card. That's something we need to take advantage of as much as possible. You know,
I've been banging on about it for months. Like, just Australian wrestling has such an advantage at the moment because we're open for business. We're running shows. Like, yeah, you guys, especially for PWA, being that you're doing the whole like live streaming, you can, in America, they like you put out before every show what time your show starts in whatever country. That you guys are open for business and you've got a live crowd. It's like something that a lot of companies can't do at the moment. Very rarely, except for WrestleMania and the crowd that they can have at Daly's Place. You guys are about the only thing really with a capacity sort of crowd you can have watching live streaming really nowadays.
Yeah, like watching SmackDown was painful because there was no one there. Like I remember I was looking up stuff. It was like Drew Gulak versus Daniel Bryan. I'm like my dream match, and there's just no audience, and you're just like, oh, like it was just hard. But you know, when we stream, you know, we can have people in the audience. Like, even watching it on a stream, having the live crowd there is such an important thing. I mean, where the streaming falls down is the fact that it is, you know, like 2 a.m. in America when it runs.
Yeah.
So,
but the good thing is
but I mean, the other thing,
it's like Fight. They can watch it whenever they want. Really. So they can get up in the morning and watch it. They don't have to get up at 2 a.m. or whatever to watch the show. They can go, fine, I know what I'm doing tomorrow morning. I'm going to watch. Hell, we've had to do it for years. Watching WWE pay-per-views, watching them at 10 in the morning. They can do it for once for a change.
Yeah, you'll get up early.
How with yours, Davis, with online, how long do you reckon you'd be off from doing something like PWA and Bonza? Because I had this discussion a while ago with one of the guys on the Turnbuckle, and he's like, "Well, what would your ideal scenario be?" I was like, honestly, it was like 1 week I'd watch PWA on a Friday night or a Saturday night whenever it's on. The next week I could watch EPW. Like RCW, they have their stuff out a couple of days after the next one on YouTube. I'm fine with that. But just that idea of maybe one day us having something where every week there's somewhere from Australia you can watch live wrestling streaming online is, I think that's the dream at the moment.
We're very close now. We've run a couple of test streams last weekend, a couple of weekends ago. That show was the first one that we ran a test stream from gate one. And I believe everything went fairly smoothly in terms of setup. Of course, there are other things that you need to consider in terms of running a live production that you don't think of when you're running a live show. So we're still stuck in a situation at the moment where our venue is preferring us to have 2 intermissions, partly because they obviously want people to leave the seats and go buy more drinks because that's how they make extra coins. So, but I mean, you know, all these things are things that as a live production, we don't really think about. We go to intermission and then one of us will lean on the production guys and just say, hey, you know, 10 minutes, let's get back out there. But if you're running a stream, obviously everything needs to be streamlined. Otherwise you've got issues and you've just got a lot of dead space and dead time during the broadcast. So we're really close. I imagine probably the next show or maybe the one after that, I think we'll be ready to go public with it. But we're trying to work out all the kinks first and make sure that by the time we hit the market, we actually know what we're doing. It's you know, it's on the wall at the EPW School of Pro Wrestling, that world class, and that's something that we take into consideration, that we don't want to go haphazard out into the market with a shitty product. We want to make sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure that we've actually got a decent product that's worth purchasing.
And you guys have got Ben and Jax up there, so
whenever anybody asks somebody about live streaming, it's especially funny because I don't think PWA were the first to live stream, but we were the first one that people probably paid attention to, if that's fair to say. It's so hard to do. It's so hard to do. Like, everyone's
not
like,
trying to put you off or anything, but it's
I'm like, fuck, man, like, is it even worth it? Like, I don't know. Like, it's so hard to do. Like, it really, it's like it adds a lot to like the element, I think, of watching it, like watching live sport. Like, there's something about watching it live that just makes it a little more like. But fuck, it's hard to do. Like, it really is. Like, there's tons of stuff you just don't think about, like streaming connection. You need to have a strong, like, what happens if your internet drops out at your venue? Like, you need to have all this other stuff in line that's just so expensive to set up at a professional level. Like the amount that gets spent on like making sure you have, like, you need to have like multiple internet connections working together in the same thing to like make, if one of them drops out, the other one does. Like, if you really want to make sure it doesn't drop out, like there's like, and that's just a little thing that you never would really think about, you know. There's tons of stuff that goes into it. Like the intermission paradox, you know, was something we had to kind of deal with. I mean, what we started doing was just pre-recording matches and then hitting the play button in between to cover the intermission. But even then, like, it can be hard to do. Or we normally do enough promos that we can do that and then do a promo, and then that kind of gives us 15 minutes. But there's just so much that goes into it. If one of the cameras drops out, you know, the sound, man, like doing sound leveling so that it you know, works properly while the show's going on and getting commentary over the top of it at the same time. Like, it's so complicated and it's so expensive. Like,
it's hard enough doing that in post, let alone actually having to do it live. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, especially if you want to do it well. Like, it'd be super easy to set up a camera that just pointed at the ring and then just plug it into the connection. And then, that's okay. Like, watch Game Changer Wrestling. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's pretty much just a hard cam that sits there, and I think half the time they don't even have real commentary. And there's tons of time when there's dead air. But, you know, people are cool with that. You know, that's okay. Like, they still get to watch their matches. They still have cool matches and that. And they're just like, well, I mean, it's either this or nothing. You know, like, here you go. That's okay. Yeah, and that's all right. But, like, especially when I've got Jackson Ben and they're just like, no, it needs to be all of these things. And I need to have graphics popping up in the middle of it. We need to have a thing over here and this happens and this comes. All right. So yeah, but it's really hard to do. So you guys take your time. You don't even worry. Don't even trip, dog. Like just you guys, it's a hard thing to do. Like it's not, I appreciate it. Like fuck.
It's I was gonna say it's got to be a blessing to have those guys that are like perfectionists, like not like the she'll be right guys. She'll be right. You these guys going, this is what we want. We want it to be this standard, and we're not going to accept it unless it is.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, the true value of Ben and Jax isn't their skill. It's their hard work. Like, you know, like it's their commitment. You know, it's their resolve to do what they're gonna do. Like it's not about like, oh, can they edit and film videos and stuff well? It's like, can they do that well? Yeah, but you can find tons of people who can edit videos, and you can find tons of people who can film and live stream things, but take guys who are actually committed enough to the product to keep doing it over and over again. You know, that's what I consider to be their real value. You know, their inability to say no. Like the amount of dumb stuff that, like, I mean, if you go and look at the old man Bonza promo that we filmed, like that was stupid. What the fuck was that? Like, I'm in a cabin in the middle of a fucking snowy mountain. You know that snow wasn't real. It was VFX. It's fucking Ben Anderson with a like a deep frying thing. You know what I mean? Like when the comes through, he fucking got tissue paper, banded up, put it in this thing, and he's standing behind me, kind of doing this with his like butt hanging out over the top of the camera to make it look like his nose coming out. Like it's insane, like the level of effects that they come up with to make it look like this fantastic cinematic product. Like I don't say a word during the promo, but they just tell this story about it. You know what's happening, like through the promo, and it all just came from, like I just sent a message to go, you know, it'd be funny, like if I took isolation literally and was in like a snowy cabin in the mountain drinking woods, like fucking drinking scotch in front of a fire, and then I hear on the radio that, you know, Kingsley's doing something stupid, so I got to come back, and he's like, oh yeah, and I'm like, I was kidding, like. But just the fact that we have the ability to do that with those guys, because they just like, we don't have the ability to do the things that they're producing. They simply refuse to take no for an answer, and they find a way. Like that's resolved. I mean, that's the kind of thing that changes things, you know. Like it's like when you talk about like you guys moving to a proper performance venue and stuff like that. Like it's the same. It's just not taking no for an answer in a positive way, you know, like in a not that I'm going to force anything on your way, but just in a, we're going to make this happen. We're going to have this success, you know, no matter what it takes. I mean, you guys are appreciating the cost jump between having a renting a hall and between having an entertainment value is massive. It's massive. Like I remember when it was like no one will ever pay more than $15 for a ticket. It's like, okay, in order to have any chance of making this money back, we need to charge $50 to $60 for a ticket. So, you know, we need to produce a product that people will pay $50 or $60 for a ticket without an international on the cut.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just stuff like that. And that's where the video goes in. But then at the same time, people walking, like you were saying, walking into that aesthetic venue, a more expensive venue, that they feel better about paying that money, you know? So like you can make those jumps, but you know, like it's very intimidating. And I think it just comes back to, again, the resolve of just being like, I don't want to be in a bingo hall anymore. I want to be at a good venue. What do we have to do? Okay, now the venue costs literally 15 to 20 times as much as the venue cost before. You're going to take a risk. Okay, we're going to take a risk. This is what we have to do, and we're going to make this happen. You know, so I think that's kind of, and it's the same attitude coming out of the pandemic. It's like, okay, that was a real kick in the teeth. Now we're going to make this happen, you know.
Yeah.
like, are you going to give up? Okay, we can give up, or we can, you know, impose our will upon pro wrestling and make it what we want to make it, you know. And that's, you know, I think that's what it really comes down to when it comes to making these leaps and making things better. But like, I think that, I think Australian wrestling is really starting to get out there more. Like, I think it's starting to take hold. It's hard to know, and it's hard to take effect, but I mean, Debbie Bennett's Raw Women's Champion.
Yeah. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I was thinking about this stuff too, because I was thinking about the schools, and I'm thinking about the stuff the schools have done. It's like, okay, PWA produces, you know, New Japan contracted talent.
Yeah.
Carl Fletcher, who's gone off and done other stuff. both the Iconics came from there, and then Wahlberg and Steph DeLando just got signed. That's from our school, and that's just the guys who actually got signed to something, let alone the ones who did, you know, other stuff, who've been to PWG, who've done all that different stuff. You guys have like Nichols and Haste and Vice and like all this. But I mean, there's just so much stuff that's happening. Like, you know, Adelaide, Bronson, we're getting cut off, aren't we?
Yeah, I was going to say we'll be back. Going to have a quick break. We'll be back after this. Russell Raider Show. Stick around.
We're coming in hot. Coming in hot. We're coming in hot.
May 8th. Live from Matt's What Sydney. PWA presents Aussie Open vs. Velocities. Live on Fight. And we're back for unscheduled break there. You were saying it's like you were saying, it's amazing the amount of success that Australians are having on the international stage at the moment. It really bears it's showing that your schools are bearing fruit now, and showing the people in Australia, look, you can learn to do this here. You don't have to go to it as good as they were, the Lance Storm schools or the other school. You can learn the trade here.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it too is like guys who have gone to Storm School or something like that, and then have come back and tell everyone else. Like, I think that was probably an important part, because I mean, I think the thing about Australian wrestling is there was like a dead stop at a certain point. It was like the 70s or 80s or whatever, and then everything died. And then like to try and do a resurgence, it was kind of like guys would have to go overseas to get trained and then come back and then try to teach people here. Like, I think that's where it kind of came from. It's almost, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's also very frustrating to see the guys who've been here for 3 years be as good as I was after 10 years. You know, but I mean, that's the thing. And then imagine how good they're going to be at 10 years, and then they're going to be teaching the next people, you know? So that's kind of the idea. But, you know, I think it's what's the word? Propagating. It's like going down a hill. Like it's getting like we're avalanching. Like that's not the word at all. You know what I mean? It's getting better and it's getting quicker.
Yeah.
It's growing exponentially is perhaps the phrase we're looking for.
$5 words. Yeah, you're right, because I was thinking I didn't even really pick up on it at the time, but when I had Havoc on the show a while ago, and he was talking about how Adelaide wrestling sort of started up, and it didn't even dawn on me that like there was nothing happening until the whole Monster Factory happened and all of that sort of sprouted from there, that there was just no wrestling at all in Adelaide. I was like thinking now, I was like, I can't even imagine, I can't believe I didn't pick up on it and say what was the thing. It's just nothing anywhere until, because the old guys just died off and there was no new guys feeding in, or I don't know what it was like. I mean, was it like that in Sydney?
Someone's gonna message us and email us and argue. Yeah, like it's gonna be like, oh no, there was this, because I mean, there's a guy hanging around Ed Locke.
Yes.
He's you guys know Ed. Yeah, he's lovely human being. But I once saw an article written from a Sydney newspaper that was just a write-up of like a wrestling card. I hadn't heard of anyone on the card, but it was from 1989 and it was by Ed Locke. So I've got to assume it was him or somebody else using the super obvious nom de plume. But yeah, 1989. So there must have been something. But, you know, nothing of, I don't think nothing that was going to get you picked up overseas, you know, like I don't think there was anything big is kind of the point. So I don't know if it was literally nothing, or maybe there was something, but it just kind of wasn't whatever. Like IWA was running in the 90s in Sydney. Like, but I also know that, like, you know, the guy who ran it, Mike Mercedes, was like a WCW wrestler or something. So he wrestled in Germany. So he went overseas and presumably got experience over there and then came back here and then started doing whatever. So it's still kind of the same concept, maybe a little earlier.
That's one thing I'd love to do just one day, just really see how far I can investigate what happened to Australian wrestling after Barnett pulled out. And that's sort of that time till the sort of the bigger resurgence? Just what happened? If it just everyone just maybe watched it on television, or what the deal was?
I feel like this is the difference between the previous generation and perhaps the generation that myself and Bonza started in, is that there was an industry that was essentially shipped in from the United States, and that they brought the majority of their guys here. They used a few local Aussies to sort of help sell the local product, but it was really built around those US stars, and it was we'll call it what it is. It was, and wrestling should be in some sense, but it was a money-making exercise. They came here because they knew business would be good, and sure enough, it was for a period of time. And then when TV disappeared, crowds stopped coming to the shows because these guys aren't stars anymore. They perhaps don't draw like they do when they're on TV. And I think it goes to show that not all of them, because, you did have people who stuck around and then helped train the next generation when the opportunity came along. But for the most part, I think for most of these guys, it was, I had my moment in the sun, I made a few bucks, and now I'm off to go live my life. And, for our generation, we started at a time where there was little to no wrestling. In Perth, there was absolutely nothing. And we had to get off our ass and make something happen. But, that attitude of having to get up and force things through, and this kind of goes back to what Bonza was saying earlier about Ben and Jax being on his team, and they just don't take no for an answer. And that's basically how Aussie wrestling has kicked the can down the road from the early 2000s to get to where we are now. Just, it has been a bunch of people who just along the way have continued to not take no for an answer. That just at every turn, we just went, cool, what's next? We put on a show. Cool. No one died. Excellent. We go to Adelaide. We get training from Jag and Havoc. We come back and run another show that sells out 350 people. Cool. What's next? We didn't ever at any stage go, 350 people. That's pretty cool. We went, cool. What's next? How can we do this bigger? How can we do this better? How can we get closer to what we see on TV? In terms of the product from the whole way through. So how do the stories become better? How do the bodies become better? How does the wrestling become better? How do we put on a better production? Just constantly never being happy with, cool, look at how far we've come. That's amazing. Cool. How do we get to where we're going next? Where are we going next? What is it that we're chasing? And through seeing people like Madison and like Hartley Jackson and Mikey Nichols go overseas and start to carve their own niche out there, to develop relationships overseas, to bring knowledge home so that they can pass that knowledge on to their home bases. Jag in Adelaide, Mikey in Perth, and Madison in Sydney. For them to go out there at a time where it wasn't like they went out there with the guarantee of, cool, I will travel to the US and then Vince McMahon will hand me an NXT contract and away I go. And please, I know that sounds very flippant because all the people who have gotten to positions where they've been able to get contracts, they've worked their asses off. So please, I'm not trying to sound flippant when I say that, but that path wasn't there. They were cutting the path. They were blazing a trail. And without them doing that, but again, that is just that. Just because I'm in Australia, all of us thought back then, we're like, well, there's no chance of getting to WWE. Yeah. But it took some people like Jag, like Mikey, like Madison, who just went, nah, that's not good enough for me. I'm not just accepting that because I'm from Australia and nobody has managed to achieve that up to this point, that I can't do that, that I can't find a way to get to Japan. I can't find a way to break in somewhere else in the world. And their ability to continue to push forward and improve.
It's impossible until someone does it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the 4-minute mile.
Before
Once someone does it, everyone sees the possibility.
Yeah, because before, like, Tenille and Matt Silver had done that with NXT, that was really, WWE was a pipe dream, unless you were like a monster, like what's his name from your
Nathan Jones.
Unless you're an absolute monster, you didn't feel like didn't seem like they were even going to look at you from another country. But then those two sort of broke through and was like, oh, well, they went through the sort of the traditional system of going through like the the normal the pathways like MCW and in Sydney and all of that sort of thing. And now that they've done this, so that must have, for the younger guys, been a real thing. Well, this is an actual achievable target now, because I've seen guys that I've seen live here do it there now.
It's been amazing what an impact having Mikey back home has had on the locker room here, and just seeing, you know, because to a lot of us, Mikey comes home and we say, cool, our friend's home. This is wonderful. You know, someone who we grew up with in wrestling, and we watched him go achieve his dream, and now he's home. But there is an entire locker room of guys who, that's Mikey Nichols, that's Nick Miller. This is a guy who's wrestled on Wrestle Kingdom. He's been to the WWE. They look at him in a completely different way. And the impact that he's been able to have on the younger guys and girls in the locker room is huge. And the little bits of knowledge that he can pass on, you know, you would always hear about when you wrestle in the States, try and chat to the old boys in the locker room and pick up some of that knowledge. We don't travel on the road. In Australia, we don't really have that opportunity because, you know, we've all got a pretty similar story to tell. You know, we grafted our trade in our backyard, but being Perth or not in our figurative backyards. But you would play your trade and you would learn, and then you would travel in Australia to try and get your name out there, or to try and pick up things from different schools that you could take back to your own school. And we've all got a pretty similar story to tell. Mikey comes back with a completely unique experience that he can pass on to all these guys and girls, that when they ask him a question about how to work on one specific thing about their act, he can give them a completely different perspective than I can. I can tell them what looks good to me and what makes sense to me, and how to perform wrestling in the way that I like it. But Mikey can tell you how to perform it in a way that's going to catch the eye of a New Japan scout or a WWE scout. It completely changes the ball game in terms of the kind of information that you can pass back to your locker room.
Yeah, you're right though, because even when, and he's not even a really, I say this would be probably hate me for it, it's not even a really massive name, but when we brought Brooksy up for the first time up here in Brisbane, there was a bunch of rookies and think, oh, that's Brooke, that, you know, that is this Brooksy. And we're like, yeah, it's Brooksy. And like, because I've known Brooksy for years, you don't realize that these kids have been watching him now, and he's like, no, that's Adam Brooks. Like, yeah, it's Brooksy. Go and talk to him. It's the only way you're going to learn shit is by talking to these guys that have had so much experience. It's what I don't understand is when, especially, and I've had this like sort of ongoing battle over the last couple of shows, is that I can't understand about schools not letting like them go to other schools with seminars, because you're going to learn to, like, there's no one that you can have. There's no seminar that you can go to where you won't learn something valuable from someone. Even if it's just one thing, it's probably worth the price of the seminar just there. That one thing that can take your game to a next level. And I always say, like, another tool for the toolbox.
Yeah, I mean, like someone say there's the best school in the world and there's the second best school in the world. The guy who goes to the best school in the world isn't going to be as good as the guy who went to the best school in the world and the second best school in the world. Yeah, like, even if you think your school's better, if there's somebody else, I mean, look, they're going to be schools who aren't great schools. You know, that's not what we're talking about. But like, if there's some reputable stuff going on in different places, you are going to be better off learning from different masters. Like, absolutely, like without question, different styles, different stuff. Like, it's just, yeah, it's silly to limit your experiences like that. Like there was one thing I wrote an article for a while ago, years ago now, but it was like, it was always frustrating to me because like, when we started in New South Wales, it was like, you work for one place, you're not allowed to go or work anywhere else. And the way I believe we changed that was when Newcastle Pro became the prominent thing, and Hoffman and that were just like, no, we don't care where you go. And because the top place was doing it, everyone else kind of had to go along with it, because otherwise, you know, Nui says we can do both. You're saying we can only do you, so we're probably going to go to Nui. Like, it's just change things a little bit, so like everybody could kind of do different stuff. I think it was one of the major impacts. But yeah, we got a lot more people in. I wrote this article and I was just kind of like, because the thing that I always felt bad for was you Google it, or whatever the first training school you show up to is, you believe everything you're told immediately. Like, it could be a completely disreputable place who have, not very good or not very good experienced coaches who are telling you the wrong things, but you're just gonna, this is what it is, and those guys are this, that, and whatever. You're gonna believe it because it's just how it works. And I always felt it was unfair that if you just happen to walk into the wrong place on your first day, your career is screwed. I was like, it's just not right. Like, so we were constantly trying to put out there, like, hey, even if you wrestle somewhere else, you're welcome at the PWA school, you're welcome at the Nui school. Please come down. You can still go wrestle there. We don't mind. Just come and train with us. You can learn something different. You can do whatever. But I wrote an article that was kind of like what to look out for on your first day, and it pretty much came down to like, walk in there. What's the first thing you do? Is the first thing they do explain to you about safety? Because if the first thing they do isn't talk to you about how tucking your chin and how dangerous the stuff is, you're probably not in a good place. Like, secondly, like, do they make you do push-ups and squats? If they don't make you do that stuff because you need a basic level of fitness, then you're not going to be strong enough to safely slam somebody. You're not going to be safe enough to look after yourself. The first thing is always going to be, do they stress safety? Do they stress physical wellness and fitness? Third, go to a show. Are they wearing proper tights? Do they look like what you see on TV? If the answer is no, that should set up an alarm bell. Like, it's just stuff like that I would just kind of put out there. If you have no idea about wrestling, and you walk into a place, and then you can just, you can tell basic stuff like that. And then the other thing was just kind of like, just check stuff out. Like, go shopping. Like, don't necessarily accept the first thing you see. And if you've got a decent head on your shoulders, you should be able to tell the difference,
It's not like back in the day when there wasn't that many schools around either. So you were sort of starved for choices.
when I started out, that I looked for any wrestling I could find in Perth, and there was nothing. And the only two schools that came up in Australia were AWF and IWA. That was it. So my options were to go to Sydney.
Well, when I started, when wasn't even planning to start, it was like I'd seen PWSA on local access TV, and then I went to a Riot City Wrestling show, and I was like, well, I liked the Riot City Wrestling product a hell of a lot more, and it looked like, do you know what I mean? It just looked larger than life. It looked like what I'd seen on TV, like you were saying. It looked like the guys had good gear. It felt like they were good workers from what I could see. And then it was like the month after they had advertised for tryouts, and because I went to the shows with Big Brody Marshall, I was like, well, you're a shoo-in, but do you want to try it anyway? He's like, yeah, for sure, we'll try it. And that was like, I think that if I'd have been to a PWA SA show and they'd have done the same thing, I don't know if I would have. So, and that's not a shot on them, but at that time, I think I just tended to lean more towards the RCW style more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things too. Like, I think it was something Davis said earlier that kind of ticked my brain over about, like, you said, like, you had certain goals to work towards, like to get bigger and stuff like that. I think that's what's missing from a lot of people's minds is specific goals. Like, if you're working towards something but you don't know what you're working towards, then how do you know that you're effectively working towards it? It can kind of come down to being honest with yourself. Like, some people want to be in, the A League, and some people want to play soccer on a Sunday afternoon, with their mates at the local oval, and if you're in the A League, you got to put in a lot more work than you do if you're going to, go and have a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon with your friends, and that's okay. But, the thing that I put out to people who, don't want to work hard but still want to be performers is, they sell tickets to the A League. They don't sell tickets to the Sunday afternoon thing. That's the difference. The second you are charging somebody money, you need to be a certain professional standard. And the only way you're going to maintain a professional standard is to put in that work and to have that gear and to do that different stuff, which is why it's important you go to a reputable school, which is why if you're not training, like, we're not going to be mean to you, but, like, you guys may think we're being mean to you because we're going to say, we don't think that you should be wrestlers. We don't support you. We don't support your product, because you could really hurt somebody. for one thing. You could hurt somebody else. And then thirdly, you know, trying to find venues somewhere can be difficult sometimes because, you know, you'll talk to the front manager. I think it's a great idea. They'll talk to somebody who was there 5 years ago when a shitty company burned the place. And they don't want you back. So, you know, it's constant headaches and stuff like that. Like that's why it's so important to seek out and find these, you know, the really good schools, and why it's important to keep a head about you. But it's also important to really be honest with yourself and goal set. Like I think I talked to Ricky once, like Ricky South, and I said, "What are you trying to do?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, I want to get signed." I'm like, "By who?" And he's like,
anyone,
you know, WRA or something like that. No, which one? It's not the same goal. You know, like, do you want to get signed by New Japan or All Japan, or do you want to get signed by WE, or do you want to get like, all like, what are you working towards? Because it's not the same thing, you know. So like, I've got like, you probably can't see, I've got a whiteboard like over here with just all tons of little goals, and then like, you think about SMART goals. They have to be specific, measurable, time, realistic, stuff like that, just to kind of work towards like, you know, stuff about my body, like what I want to look like, what I want my character to be, what I want my move set, how many matches do I want to have this year, you know, like just things like that to try and work towards. You really need to have the end goal in mind. And I guess that's probably my advice to a lot of individual wrestlers, is to think like, I think like Steph DeLanda might be the best one, because she was just kind of like, I mean, she's only young too, and she didn't have like a lot of other things or whatever, but she pretty much just went, I want to be signed by WWE. And then 3 years later, she was, because she just kind of went like, okay, what do I need to do to present myself in such a manner that's going to get me signed? And then she did it, and then it happened. And like, I reckon one day her, like, if she does her autobiography or a story, it's going to be frustrating to listen to. She's just going to go, you know, I was 19 and I decided I wanted to be signed by WWE. So, you know, I dropped my mask. I gave myself a moniker. You know, I made sure I worked out in the gym every day. I still live with my parents. And then, you know, a year later, I had a tryout. They flew me to England. I did 2 weeks there. And then I did that. But all the things she did to do that, she just nailed it straight away. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she knew how to work towards it. And she made it happen, which just made it seem so much, it made it seem effortless by comparison to anybody else. Clear goal. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what's missing from a lot of people, is just like, what exactly do you want to get out of this?
Yeah, her story reminds me so much of Demi's. Whereas like when people ask me about it, like, how do you, it's like, well, please do not put like Demi's situation as something that you think is just an easy thing to do, because she just, it was almost like as soon as she walked into a ring, that was it. I remember, I think she was like a year into it when Pierce came down for a show and was mad that she was only, I think she was only 17 at the time. He was mad because he was like, oh, they're not going to sign you yet. You'll have to wait a year. So it was not like, oh, if you keep working in a year, you'll get signed. It was like, no, you just have to be a year older and they'll sign you.
I think part of it too that people need to remember is not to take stuff so personally either. Because like, I mean, if again, it's a smart thing. Like, you got to think about like, okay, if you want to work towards something, what is it like what do you need to do to get there? And the answer is normally, well, what do they want in somebody that they sign? And that's kind of like, okay, women in wrestling are far rarer than men in wrestling. So if you're a woman, you're a demographic that's more likely to get attention and get noticed just due to scarcity.
Yeah.
You know, like just basic stuff like that. Like, I'm a 5'11" white guy. They have a lot of me. You know, they have a lot of me. Like, and so it's just one of those things. You can't take it personally. Like, when they're casting their TV show, and they're like, okay, you know, we need this many people in this demographic. And that's what it is. They pick their demographics. So they go, we need this person. Like, it's not a mistake that like they're trying to move into China. And so they start, you know, doing tryouts in China, and they start trying to chain, you know, people from that area. Like, it's just a business to them. And so like, if you've got something like that, you work into what their thing is. And it's like, you can't take it too personally. No. But then that's when you see things like Wahlberg. He's a 5'11" white guy, and he got signed. So like, yeah, there's stuff like that too. It doesn't make it impossible. Yeah. But you know, again, you can't always take it super personally. Like, I in my opinion, Adam Pearce sees Demi Bennett at 17 years old. If she were male, she probably still would have been signed. Like, that's not to take away from the fact that she got signed because of her talent, her ability, and her strength. But I doubt Adam Pearce would have looked at her and said, they will sign you in a year. Yeah. You know, that might have been the difference. Like, he might have looked at her and said, if you keep working for a year, you've got a really good chance, as opposed to saying like, oh, well, you know, the second this date ticks over, here's your contract.
Yeah.
Like it's stuff like that. That's kind of like, you know, you just gotta be mindful of, you know, but like even other stuff too. Like, I mean, you know, like why do I grow the beard? You know, like why do I do stuff like that? You know, it's like it's just to have a slightly different look, something to make you more interesting compared to other people. You know?
That's the funny thing is because like the running joke over the whole COVID break was like, oh, everyone's going to come back having beards, and that will be their new look. And I sort of like I laughed at it, and then when you did it, I was like, well, he's pulling it off. He actually pulled it off. Like there's a lot of guys that would have done it and it wouldn't have really worked as well, but you just come back and okay. Yeah, it's a good look. Okay, you did it.
The extent to which I tried to kayfabe it too. Like I didn't take a photo below this level, you know, the entire time. I think the first one that got out there was when my son was born.
Yeah.
Me holding him.
I remember a couple of years ago, Matt Basso, and I think it was a big break between shows, accidentally trimmed something and had to shave his beard off and would not take a photo again until his beard grew back. He's no one's seeing the face. I have to let it grow out.
Protect the gimmick.
That's right. What do you say to guys, both of you? What do you say to guys that sort of just even in the local sort of arena feel like they're being held back or held down? That is, I suppose, the term. Is it just a matter of like, look, this is what you've got to work on. I'm not holding you back because I don't like you. I'm not holding you back because this is what you have to work on. You work on these things, and there's a good chance that more will happen for you. That's
a hard one to answer. Like I find that kind of what Bonza just said, that, you know, it seems like a simple thing, but he looked to change. He changed his look by just growing the beard because it helped him move into an area and a look that other people didn't have. And that's constantly how I reassess my own wrestling. As wrestlers at the top of the card in any given area. So, you know, obviously I spend a lot of time training people in Perth as well as wrestling in high profile spots. Steve does the same thing over there. You're going to have some influence on the product and on the people that you're training. You need to be constantly looking to shift before the market dictates to you that it's time to shift. You don't want to be, by the time you get out to wrestle in the main event, that 3 people have gone out there and done 3/4 of your moveset, and just little things that you are teaching in terms of psychology and match planning and whatever else. You don't want to be the 4th version of that match going out at the end of the night. Granted that I'll still back myself in that I can do what I can do well enough that I will be okay at the end of the night. But you don't want to be a retread of something that people have already seen. It's about trying to move constantly and change and adapt. I find that most ambitious wrestlers are constantly asking questions. They're not waiting. The question they ask isn't, why am I being held back? The question they're asking is, what else can I do in order to get noticed? What can I do to stand out? What do you think of this idea? And at times, you know who the ambitious wrestlers are because they're almost annoying. And I say almost, almost. You would rather someone come to you with 10 or 15 ideas and 1 or 2 of those things stick and help evolve their character and make them stand out on the show, than someone who just constantly says to you, what do you got for me? What do you got for me? What have you got for me? What have you got for yourself? I think that's a question you need to constantly be asking yourself. For me, you know, I'm constantly challenging myself and trying to be true to my character, at the same time looking for what is the next evolution of what I'm doing? What is the next phase that I'm going to move into? So, you know, sometimes it's ego-driven Messiah Davis Storm with a painted face who's got this Messiah complex, but he's hiding this lack of confidence. And then at other times I'm friendly old dad Davis Storm, who's just looking to do the right thing by the next generation of wrestlers and trying to set a good example. So, yeah, rather than, and I would appeal to wrestlers to look at it that way too. What is it that's stopping you from being noticed? Because if you are working hard, you will find that people are generally going out of their way to assist you, to give you advice, to say, hey, I can see you working really hard. By the way, have you considered this, this, or this? And you know that there are a bunch of really young, ambitious crew here. Like I said, these are the people who they get past their anxiety and they get past their ego and they approach Mikey Nichols, even though they're scared shitless of approaching him in the first place. Mikey's an intimidating dude. He doesn't like to be bothered, but he's more than happy to answer questions. But you need to ask him. He's not coming to you. He's not going to walk around the locker room and say, hey guys, does anyone need a little bit of advice about their match? Or is there something I can tell you guys? You need to suck it up and go to him and say, hey Mikey, here's something I'm thinking about in terms of my character or my match. Would you be able to assist me? Most of the established veterans that I know in Australian wrestling would jump out of their skin to help you if you just ask. But you've got to get past that anxiety. You've got to get past whatever hang-ups you might have about asking people. Just get out there and put yourself out there and ask. And, you know, if you ask 2 or 3 different people, even if one doesn't respond, I guarantee you the other 2 will. There are veterans across the country who are just jumping out of their skin waiting to be asked to help. And they're more than happy to. But don't be afraid to ask those questions. And generally, like I said, generally I find the cream does rise to the top. You know, what promoter is going to hold back an ambitious, talented person who is getting over? It's just, the idea is ludicrous that someone would go out there, put the effort in, work hard, set a good example for the rest of the locker room, and get themselves over, that we are going to try and push that person down. The idea is just lunacy.
Yeah, because it hurts your own product. In the end of the day, you're hurting yourself by not using this person to the fullest you can.
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, I think you already said it, but if someone said something to me about like, why am I being held down? I'd be like, you might want to rephrase your question.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good, yeah.
God, I'm sorry, what?
Probably ask it nicer than I've said. I said this one.
I was just kind of like, what can I do to be in a better spot than I am currently? What do I need to improve about myself? How do I make myself more valuable to PWA or the company? It's a hard thing to answer, you know, like, because I mean, like, I think before it was like, okay, you know, be in good physical shape and be a good wrestler, and then try to do whatever, like, it kind of makes you stick out. The difficult thing is that now there are like 40 good wrestlers on the roster, like, and there aren't 40 spots. Like, it's like, how do you get on? It's like, I don't know, like you have to, it's so competitive now. Like, one of the things I always bring up that's been so funny with the recent movement is that, like, if you actually go back and follow the little thread, what would normally happen, from what I could ascertain, was that there'd be a company, and then they would have a training school, and then they would train this new lot of wrestlers, and then the new lot of wrestlers would come in and go, we want these spots, and the older guys would go, no, these are our spots. So the newer guys would go, well, fuck you, we're going to go off and start our own school. And they go off and start their own company, and there are 2 companies. And then, like, maybe they survive, or maybe one of them dies, and then the process repeats itself every couple of years over and over again, which kind of stopped rosters from getting too big. But that hasn't happened over the last, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 years. So now we're at a point where, like, between Newcastle Pro and PWA, I think the last count was there's like 65 active roster members. Like, and it's like, and they're all very good. Like, you know, it's like there's not a lot of there's no bad wrestlers there. And if there are guys whose in-ring skills aren't that good, they got an incredible character that they pull off in front of whatever that gets them over very well. So, like, it's there's not a good answer, really.
Yeah.
Like, some people just suffer from a lack of spots, you know, which means we're just going to try and get more shows, and we're just going to try and do different things to give people the opportunity. You know, I think that's probably my biggest ongoing concern is always, how do we keep the school running when we have guys who are ready to get their first couple of matches, but we don't have a lot of shows for them to have that experience on? That's like a constant problem. But I guess the main thing I think of, if someone was going to be like, how do I do it? And this is far from the easiest answer, is like, if you can find something that really strikes a chord with people, in terms of like a character or an angle or something that kind of launches. And then sometimes like you just kind of get lucky, like, but like, I guess it's like what you said, you've just got to keep coming up with stuff until you find that idea that strikes gold. You know, like the prefects, like they were like, it was the funniest thing because they had like at the end of the year we have awards, and there's like who's going to win the rookie of the year, and then I think like the votes went to Kingsley for rookie of the year, and then we kind of had a discussion with management, and then we gave it to the prefects. The prefects didn't get a single vote for rookie of the year because nobody realized they were rookies. They were getting so over, and their gimmicks and their characters were so good that we were like, pretty much just did the end of year awards and just went like, yeah, guys, nobody voted for them, but you made the wrong decision. So here's the.
I was going to say, is this like the first time Kingsley's hearing this? Because she might be a little pissed about it.
Oh no, I'd probably tell her that. No, she's good. Because I mean, like I'm talking like that was bullshit, because like Kingsley had like one match. Like we're talking when Kingsley's rookie of the year, we're talking about like she got a bunch of votes and she debuted in October for an award that was given out like at the end of November. It's like, nah, man, you can wait till you win your rookie of the year award. Like that was the thing. So like I think she still won promo of the year, so she got something. But no, that was the thing. But like they just had this character idea, and it was just like they're dressed up like that, and their finishing move was going to be the schoolboy. And we've just walked in and looked at them, and they've gone like, they're doing really well at training. What can we do with them? I went, what if we Marky whip-wreck them?
Yeah.
You know what? They don't get a single piece of offense, but they hit that schoolboy, and then they get it. And then it's just like, and they just get 4 or 5 minutes every time. They don't even get a punch in. They just somehow find that schoolboy. And then they just started getting so over by selling and just getting this move that coalesced with their gimmick that they pulled off so well. Because I mean, the original point of the gimmick was we're doing 18 plus shows now, so now we've got 2 kids with fake ID sneaking in to remind everybody that. So they were able to strike a chord with people because this is 18 plus. They're underage trying to sneak in. They've got the move that works with them, whatever, and then they're wrestling really well. So just a perfect Davis that came together. That kind of worked for them. And then, you know, like you said as well, we ended it before it got old with the cinematic match.
All right, guys.
So we're going to get cut off again.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. I can't believe that we've just plowed through as far as I 100% want to have you guys on again, because I've absolutely loved this chat, and I think we can move into more areas the next time. So, Bonza, David Storm, I'll put your Twitter handles up here so they can see and follow you, because I don't know how much more time I've got. So thank you so much for joining me, boys.
Hey,
Pleasure.
Big thanks again to Stormy and Bonza for coming on the show. I think you'll agree. If you love wrestling as much as I do, you would have loved that discussion, because as soon as we got offline, I messaged them and thanked them and said, I'm 100%. I want you guys back on the show again, because that was great. And I think we didn't cover a quarter of the stuff that I want to talk about with those guys. And I could probably talk to them every week for a year, and it would still be a good show every time. So big thanks to those guys. Support PWA, support EPW. You've just met 2 of the guys behind it, and you can tell they are doing all they can to make it as good as they possibly can. So all we can do as fans of professional wrestling is support them in that endeavor. If you want to support us, though, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to WRA. It's free. You can do it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. We're on YouTube, of course. If you're watching this, we're on YouTube. Hit subscribe. notifications so you know when the shows are up next. If you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a rating review, 5 stars if you can, if you wish. Helps us get inside more ears, and then share the show and spread the word about professional wrestling in this country, which is what we love doing every week. If you want to support the local industry, subscribe to their services, buy their fight app, shows, all of that good stuff. Of course, May 8th, we've got PWA is the next one coming up for that. Aussie Open against Velocities. So go and purchase that, because that match alone is worth whatever you'll pay for seeing that on fight. So go out there, get it, because you won't regret that. Just for that match alone, you won't regret trying it out. So there we go. That's a huge sell for me. We're not terrible at this. If you want to support us, or you want to follow everything we're doing here at Wrestle Radio Australia, go and like us on Facebook at Wrestle Radio Australia, or at Twitter and Instagram at Wrestle Radio AU. And I am on Twitter at Beast Eastman if you want to hear old man views on wrestling and my psychopathic attempts to not sing the chorus to Sweet Caroline while I'm out shopping and listening to it in my earphones. If you want to support the wrestlers themselves, go to wrestlermerch.com. They're not a sponsor, but I love what they're doing, and I love the fact that they're helping support the wrestlers around the country. So, and they really do have wrestlers from every part of the country now on their website. So if you've been to a show and you wanted to buy the merch that one of the wrestlers had, but you just didn't have the money that week, and that's understandable because you already forked out for the ticket, you probably forked out for food, probably forked out for drinks. You wanted to buy the merch, you couldn't. Go on to wrestlermerch.com, check out their shop, buy a shirt, support them. It really goes to help them better themselves, I guess, is a good way of saying it. Because like Bonza said, I think he was talking about when you're looking at schools, and if schools attach to a promotion, go and have a look and see if they're wearing the right gear, if they look professional, they look all of that stuff that if you buy a t-shirt or buy something from Wrestler Merch, that helps them being able to afford to get the good gear and all of that good stuff. So it's all very cyclical. The more we support them, the more they can improve themselves, the more we like the product, it feeds onto itself. So something I really want you guys to do, and really want to boost Australian professional wrestling, because this is prime time for us to really put our mark on the world and show them how good we are here in Australia. No real way to support us, of course, as usual. Go to redbubble.com and search out Wrestle Radio Australia. T-shirts, all the stuff you want to put the logo on, you can. Any profits that go from that go to Gotcha for Life and Beyond Blue, which is two charities that we really do support here, and really do think a lot of. They do some really great work around the community with men's health and mental health and all of that good stuff, which is something we really do support on the show. That is it for this week. Next week's show will be up early. Next week's show will be up on Wednesday, because I really want to help push and promote this next PWA event, which is on May the 8th. And so in doing that, I want to get the show out early on Wednesday so you guys can hear the interview, can hear the final spiel going into the show, and really push it so you can buy it on Fight and get ready for it. Because my guest this week is someone who, well, this week coming, is someone who I've been trying to get on for ages. And if you've ever listened to the show, you know what a fan I am of their work. And that is the PWWA champion, Jessica Troy, the arm collector. I cannot wait to talk to her. It's going to be great. Well, I think it's going to be, I hope it's going to be great. I'm a massive fan of her work. Like I've said before many times, top 5 wrestler in this country, in my opinion. I love everything she does in that ring. I love the gimmick. I love the character. I love all of that sort of stuff. I cannot wait to talk to her, and that will be next week right here on Wrestle Radio Australia. Until then, have a good one.
Let's be busy 23, got me feeling way too sweet. Yeah. Too sweet, put your fangs up. Too sweet, pour another cup. Let's be busy 23.